If you're self-employed and you're currently considering getting a mortgage and you're struggling a little bit because you can't quite borrow the amount of money that you wanted to, then you need to watch this video because I want to show you a genuine way which you can actually improve the amount of money that you can borrow with this very simple tip. It's something that not many people consider, and I've just done this for an existing client and they are over the moon because they can now borrow more money. So at the time of recording this video, it's April 2024, and we've just gone into a brand new tax year. Now, if you're self-employed, you'll know that that automatically means that it's time that you do your tax return. However, a lot of self-employed people will wait the typical 9-month time period before you actually have to submit your self-employed tax return and not submit that tax return until January of 2025. Now, when it comes to actually doing your tax return, you don't have to actually wait until January of the following year. You can do it straight away if you want to. And in fact, more people should do this because it just gets the worry of that tax paperwork out of the way and you know where you stand going into the next financial year. So first tip, do your tax return early. Don't leave it until the last minute by waiting until January of the following year. Now, another key piece of information that I want to tell you before we get into the actual detail is that if you are self-employed and you are looking to get a mortgage, then lenders will only work off your self-employed income figures as long as they are within 18 months old. Now, what that means as an example, let's assume in the January just gone that you have actually submitted your tax return for the previous year. That means that your income figures on file are for your tax year end, April 2023. Now, on the basis that a lender will only use your income figures as long as they're within the last 18 months, that means that those figures are now only valid until October of 2024. So if you want to apply for a mortgage using those figures and not your most recent figures, you have to apply before October 2024. After that, you will need to submit your latest tax return in order to be able to get a mortgage. But going back to the tip, like I said, once the tax year is over at the beginning of April, there's absolutely nothing to stop you from actually doing your tax return immediately. And in fact, if your income figures have increased, this is going to be a benefit to you. So a client came to me very recently with a property that they really liked and they wanted to purchase. They needed to borrow a certain amount of money. I requested all of their documentation from them, including their income figures, and I'm going to show you in a second exactly how these numbers turned out. But just so you know, one of the applicants was employed and one of the applicants was self-employed. So for the self-employed applicant, we were working off the tax year figures for April 2023. So if we take a look on screen, I'll show you the basics of this client. So they were looking to purchase a property. They wanted a full repayment mortgage, and the purchase price of the property that they really liked was £700,000. They ideally wanted to borrow £630,000 if at all possible. The mortgage was going to be taken over a 30-year term, and they were willing to consider a 5-year fixed rate. We've assumed an interest rate of between 4 and 5%, and as I said, there were 2 applicants. Their estimated retirement age was age 75, and it was a young married couple with 1 dependent child that was 2 years old. So as I said, one of the applicants was employed and she was on 63,000, and the self-employed applicant gave us his last 3 years income figures, and these were those numbers as you can see. So gradually increasing numbers, which is all great news. The most recent year being 72,352. The employed applicant had no monthly bonuses, no annual bonuses, no commission, no extra income whatsoever, and they had absolutely no credit commitments. We've put in their basic expenditure, and then we move on to the next screen and then search in all the lenders to work out which lender is going to be the best and offer them the most money. So let's just run the calculation quickly. And as you can see, this is what actually happened when we're calculating the affordability. The system works through all of the lenders that are on this system. Not all lenders are on this system, but the majority of main lenders are. So this system goes through each lender's criteria and it runs affordability checks using the lender's own affordability calculators, using the information that we've provided. So jumping to when the calculation is actually completed, this red line here is the amount of money that the client wants to borrow in an ideal world. So as it stands currently, you can see that we are falling a little bit short. We've still got one lender at the moment, a maximum of £607,000 lend. Remember, the client wants to borrow £630,000. So what can we do about this? Well, I reminded the client that the tax year had just ended, and I asked her if her partner's income had actually increased over the last year. And she said, yeah, I think it has, Craig. So I said, look, tell him to do his tax return and then send me the SA302 once that's been done, and we'll change the numbers to see how that's going to impact the amount of money that you can borrow. So if we go back to the application details and we go into recalculate, what we can do is we can go down to the self-employed applicant and we can update his income figures. So basically what we do is we shift these numbers down by 1 and we put in the latest figures into the top column. So first of all, let's do this. 56,023 into that box there, 72,352 into that box there, and the latest year's numbers, which was 89,724. You go on to next and next again, and recalculate. Now, the reason that doing this is important is because if you're self-employed and if your income has increased, most lenders will actually take an average of the last 2 years' net profit figures. There are some lenders which will work on the most recent numbers, but there aren't that many to choose from. So to give yourself the best choice, most lenders will actually average the last 2 years' net profit. And those increased numbers will have a positive effect on the amount of money that you can therefore borrow. So as you can see, the system is doing its magic and it is running through all the lenders. Now the system's finished. As we jump to that calculation, we can see the impact that that has had. Remember, the red line is the line where they want to borrow £630,000. And with these slightly improved numbers, you can now see that we've got at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lenders that will potentially lend this client the amount of money that they actually wanted to borrow. Now, this client was going to wait until January of next year before actually submitting their tax return because that's just what they've always done. But as I said, if you're wanting to get a mortgage now and you know that your income has potentially increased, in order to maximize your affordability, get that tax return submitted because you can see the effect that this will have. This was a positive outcome for this client. They've subsequently been offered on the property and that offer has been accepted. So now we're going to be getting on with their full mortgage application.